Hi, Krista. So there's this thing that happens a lot of the time. You hear an argument, and there are two sides presented, and being a clever clogs, you imagine that the truth probably lies somewhere between those two extremes, right? Wrong, that's not actually how it works. Now, it's important to be able to spot a false dichotomy and to imagine things complexly, but just because something lies in a gray area between two extremes does not mean that it lies smack dab in the middle. I think that sometimes the truth is a little bit more binary than that. For example, a long while ago in a Question Tuesday video, John Green was asked what he thought about Israel-Palestine, and he said that he thought the most important step was that both sides acknowledge the validity of each other's narrative. And while I totally respect the effort to understand things from other people's perspective, I think that that is just a wrong answer. I think the most important step would be for Israel to start fucking respecting Palestinian human rights and to stop building new settlements in Palestinian territories. I think the narrative that Israel is defending itself when it's engaged in this kind of aggressive behavior and when it systematically discriminates against Palestinians is a false narrative. I think that needs to be questioned. I think it actually needs to be undermined, and I don't think that we need to acknowledge the validity of that particular part of the narrative. Also, part of Israel's narrative is that it is a Jewish state. It is the Jewish state, and I think that that is misleading. Israel does not represent all Jews. Israel represents Zionist Jews, and while there's nothing wrong with claiming to represent all Zionist Jews, the fact that it claims to be a homeland for all of the Jewish people and to speak with a united voice of the Jewish people is wrong. It's wrong both ethically and technically. The fact that these two are so conflated means that I have difficulty critiquing Israeli domestic and foreign policy because I know that that means there'll be a bunch of anti-Semites that are going to agree with me, and that makes me feel icky. But cool it, Israel. I'm not saying you should stop existing, I know a lot of people are saying that, but I reserve the right to say that your behavior is bad. Stop behaving badly. Now, this doesn't mean that I think that the Palestinian narrative is entirely good or positive. There are problems with it. For example, I think Israel will probably continue to exist, and calling for its destruction means calling for the death of a lot of people, and that is not something I can get behind. However, the power dynamics between these two narratives are not identical. Just because there are two stories does not mean that both of those stories carry equal weight. This is not a conflict between two countries, this is a conflict between Israel and people living in Israeli-occupied territories. I think that apartheid is an appropriate word for that situation. And I am not co-opting the apartheid struggle. That is a word that Nelson Mandela used to describe the situation in Palestine. It is a word that Desmond Tutu continues to use to describe the situation in Palestine. I've said it before and I'll say it again. People live in worlds of meaning and material conditions, and while it's really important to change people's hearts and mind, I would love it if Israelis changed their worldview. I think right now what is important to me is that Israel changes its behavior, because its behavior is unacceptable. And until then, boycott, divestment, and sanctions. Yeah, I'm all about nuance, but sometimes you gotta pick a side. Krista, I will see you tomorrow.